Doug, we are here with our first attempt at a video podcast because, I think people are dying to see our faces. Don't you? There's plenty of people that want to see the secret behind the secret.
Pretty scary in my standpoint. I have trouble looking at myself in the mirror sometimes.
It's not a hobby of mine, but there are these narcissists, these people that, and we've talked about one of the most famous, and I mean this as a compliment if he happens to ever someday hear this, but Phil Bruder, I think, tops the list of any narcissist, somebody that really is enamored with themselves and thinks highly of themselves. But I've noticed also in the social media day and age, you ever notice how some of these kids can't get enough of themselves on their phones and taking pictures of themselves? And that's not something, I don't know about you, I still, even though I can do that, I don't feel like taking 50 pictures of myself a day.
I'm still where I can get emails, I can get texts, I can text. I actually get Twitter, and that wasn't of my own record. Basically, my players got me on there. And I can respond to tweets, but I haven't gotten to the level where I can tweet on my own.
Or you can tweet or twit or whatever it is with a Twix or something like that. Yeah, and so that's something that's a little different. So the fact that some of you can see our faces, this might be a disappointment because it's kind of like that scene in Wizard of Oz when you see the Great Oz and then you see the guy behind the curtain really what he's doing. It's a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a letdown. So anyways, thanks for coming in again. We've been doing these actually just having these discussions every other week for the last couple of months, and we really enjoyed having you come down. Today I want to start this one off with a special topic and something that maybe can hold people down, so you might want to listen for more than 5 minutes or so, but just talking about our moms. We have our, everyone has their own experiences, mostly good I think for the most part, but life is full of different situations for everybody. But I wanted you to talk to me a little bit about, your mother is 96?
Right. Excuse me. She'll have her 97th birthday on February 21st. So
wow.
It's been, and she's had the ups and downs of somebody that age, but she's still bright.
Yeah.
She actually, it's funny when you talk to people that've been through that. Just think of all the years that she's been through. I mean, she went through the Depression. She went through.
Think about it.
Yeah,
the television, the radio.
World War II.
Incredible. The airplane.
Yep.
The development of the automobile. I mean, ridiculous.
Television,
movies, the television. I mean, really ridiculous.
She'll never pick up a cell phone. I tried to get her one on different occasions, and I did buy her one, and she never looked at it. Never picked it up. Didn't even know where it was after a week.
Now, what's your mother's full name?
Marjorie Myers. Marjorie Bowman Myers.
Marjorie Bowman Myers.
Right.
And was she born on the West Coast, or did she?
No, she was grown in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very bright. Her dad was a professor at Purdue University, and that's where my mom ended up going to college too. She was on a special group that was they were involved in mathematical engineering, and a special group of girls. That's why the Hidden Figures movie, if anybody's seen that, kind of
relates to that, right?
A little bit,
right?
And my mom has zero patience. On a good day.
So she likes things done her way?
And fast.
Yeah. And so you live with her?
Yeah, she lives with me actually. But
so I would imagine you have her routine.
Pretty much.
I don't want to say well trained you are, but
a neighbor that takes care of her when I don't.
Give me an example of something she likes her way and.
Oh, she's a huge sports fan.
And
she's going to watch almost anything that has a ball on it.
But
mainly football, and again she loves the Big Ten.
Follows her school, right?
She likes basketball.
Does she know pretty much how the teams from Purdue are doing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She won't go to bed till she finds out how they did.
Wow.
And
true Boilermaker.
I think she likes it because I try to explain things to her in football, even though she doesn't want to hear them.
Exactly.
And she followed the baseball, Dodger fan. Not as big a Dodger fan as me.
So this is, do you get the Dodger channel at your house? And that's.
Unfortunately, no, we don't.
Okay, because that's I don't know how else you're supposed to watch the Dodgers nowadays. For the longest time, you know, I don't know when this whole thing, when they kind of separated the channels and the networks, but I think we went without, Don and I kind of dug in the ground, Don Menard, and we dug in the ground and we didn't get the channel for a while, and so, and hoping that the other cable provider was gonna provide the Dodgers for us, and boy, I tell you, after about three years or so, Don and I both just broke down and got the channel. And I actually bought the channel for my mother, who's been a lifelong Dodger fan. Not to the point to where, you know, she cries if they lose or anything like that, but we've always loved our home teams. And so that was one thing about this particular year that I was glad I was able to provide for her, is just enjoying the Dodger games. But a year off from Vin Scully, because he retired last year, and there's nothing like hearing his voice.
The way he could tell the story is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, there's nobody that could do it
Yeah.
quite like he could.
So your mother's lived with you for how long now?
I'd say about 6, 7 years. She got very sick and was living with my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And then she came in and moved in with me. She's actually staying with me while I was in Colorado in a tournament. And then she got sick.
Okay.
And she ended up staying with me after that.
Right. You know, the reason I brought this topic up too is that it's a little close to my heart. We're actually having our mother's funeral this Thursday. It's Tuesday today.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just an experience. Like I said, everyone goes through it. I was mentioning a couple minutes ago that, you know, you're either in the club of both your parents are alive, or you're in the club of one of your parents has passed, or you're in the club of both your parents have passed. You were also mentioning your father. Did he pass suddenly?
He had a heart attack. It was actually the second one that he had, but he grew up in an era when everybody in the world smoked,
Yeah.
and so did he.
How old was he when he passed?
He was 58,
Mm.
and he died on his birthday. His
Wow.
58th birthday. So
And you said jogging, yeah.
he wasn't a big jogger, but he was trying to.
Boy,
They
I was
prescribed
one this morning. I'm glad.
Talking of picking little pieces of what you want to do.
Yeah.
He did the jogging part and rode bicycles and things like that, and played golf and tennis, but he smoked too, so.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
like
but like you
saying-
said, he grew up at an age where, you know, we were just looking at old commercials and things, and I don't know why I came across something about, it was mentioning how the Marlboro Man had passed away from cancer. So the Marlboro Man, the cowboy in the commercial was so glamorous, and it was such a guy, you know, no one really followed the story, but, you know, our fathers, my dad was born in 1924, so how about your dad?
My dad was born in 1920.
Yeah, so they were guys, you know, a World War II guy?
Yep.
Yeah, so and that was just part of what they did. That was seemed like such a part of the lifestyle. There aren't too many pictures that you see guys sporting those nice looking pants and those cars of the 40s, and you know, they don't have a cigarette in their hand as well too. My dad stopped cold turkey. Gosh, I'm going to say he was probably early to mid 50s. Because I remember, I have some memories of him smoking, not very many, but I actually remember hearing that my dad had stopped, and then he stopped, he never smoked again, and lived another 20 years. Cancer didn't kill him, or a heart attack, but yeah, that takes some willpower too, because it's a pretty strong addiction.
I can only imagine. It's just, my dad I was very close to. He was one of those that tried to make it, even though work stopped him from some of the time, to almost all my sporting events. When I played Little League for him, and he traded me.
Or wanted to, threatened to? What do you mean by that?
Well, he was actually, didn't want to be, you know, a coach's kid on the team.
Okay,
And so he figured it would be better for me if I played on
Wow.
a friend of his, so.
How many dads even think that way?
Yeah, but when I tell people they traded for me.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, yeah. You mentioned, you know, him always being there, and I never realized till after the fact that my dad would go into work earlier in the day and get off of work earlier and go and just hang out by the fence and watch practice. And my dad was, if I say imposing, he had an energy and a strength about him.
Of course, back then, lifespan wasn't near as long.
What year did your dad pass?
1978.
1978, something like that?
1978. Yeah, 1978 exactly, that's what it was.
Mine was 98. Now, you mentioned he was a World War II guy?
World War II guy, right? He went to
Was he
Purdue.
in
He went to Purdue.
Europe or,
No, yeah, he was in the Aleutians,
okay,
basically. He got hit with some shrapnel and he had a disease, I forget what they called it. I don't know if it was Legionnaire's disease, does that sound right or not? But
definitely one of the times there, yeah.
Mhm. So, he never completely got over that, but like, he was a remarkable guy. He was one of those guys that he always seemed to be like the center of any situation.
Yeah.
He was a salesman too, so.
So kind of like when he walked into a room, he became the room, that's what Coach Normie used to talk about.
But he wasn't loud or anything like that. It was
Charisma?
He just had great charisma, but
Yeah.
he had great timing, if I knew how to say it better. He always seemed like there, you know, when I would have a big moment in sports, let's say, or anything, for whatever reason, it always seemed like he was there.
Yeah,
And, you know, but the one last thing, I don't want
Yeah.
to really make this
yeah,
any longer than it is, but I thought that I would feel differently when he died initially, but it's one thing that, you know, I still think about it. It hit me and then,
yeah,
you know, like 6 months later, you know, I kind of hit me more, and then different times it comes back to you.
it's interesting how it works.
Mhm.
You know, whether you call it grieving or the process of it, but it's interesting how it works. So anyways, yeah, to wrap up the initial, what we wanted to talk about was, you know, got the holidays coming out and, you know, I can beat myself up with the guilt and what I didn't do and when I didn't call. And, you know, it was one thing funny with my mom is, you know, if I didn't call her for a couple of weeks and I'd call her and I'd kind of feel bad about it. And I mean, I'm ready to talk to her. And then she'd kind of shoo me off because she was watching a TV program and she kind of like blow me off and I'd hang up the phone going, man, why am I beat myself up, but my mom never really did that to me. So anyways, enjoy your mothers and, you know, if it could be a better situation with your mom, try to always respect your mothers as mothers should be respected. And, you know, just take advantage of the holidays coming up. So we're gonna get into a little softball too, since that's really what we're here to talk about. But that was just something for everyone to relate to. We were talking a little bit last week. We spent some time this week at lunch, and I had asked you a question. You know, the notoriety that you have as a coach for the slapping part of this game, and I've done a little bit of my own work with it. And so I asked you, who comes to mind when I ask you, who is the fastest kid you can remember running the first base? You know, we used to call it for the O-S-H-I-T factor of who, you know, who really, when they're walking up going, oh, dang, this kid can. So who comes to your mind when you?
Well, as far as Julie Smith was incredible. She wasn't a
Interesting,
slapper.
yeah.
Although they tried to have her hit occasionally from the left side,
So a right-handed batter.
right-handed batter. She
Yeah.
was incredibly fast.
Wow, that's a great shout out to Julie right there.
Yeah, she was amazing. And she just, because I hadn't been involved in softball that long, because she came in like the mid-80s, mid to
Who
late.
did she play for?
She played for Gary.
Okay.
Gary Henning, and that was.
And this is Julie Smith. If none of you know the organization, it's a SoCal organization called Team Smith.
Right.
I don't know how much she's still involved or that, but that's where that came from, so. Yeah. And coaching at, is it Redlands?
I believe so,
So-
yes. But she was, I'm trying to guess, I think she went to Texas A&M, and then she transferred maybe to Fresno.
Okay,
I could be wrong on that, but
Uh-huh.
just, she had another gear faster than anybody. And of course,
so was it about her speed? Was it about her overall presence? Was it,
her speed.
okay, so
and
she could make, so once she was on the bases, she'd make things happen?
she made things happen, and she would, you could hit a ground ball back to the pitcher, she's on third base, she'd throw the ball to first and she'd be home.
Yeah,
Yeah, she just, it's, I've been involved with that aspect of the game from a speed standpoint. I actually, when I played baseball in high school, I also ran track too, because I was really fast. I went
nice.
to the one track practice, it almost killed me.
You mean you only went to one and then that was it, or that?
That was, no, I ran all the races. I ran all the races. My main sport was softball, but we ran track, and I was, I did real well in it, actually. I won the league championship. And,
Awesome.
and until I ran against the big guys in
So you got
CIF.
against the big time. So this is at what high school?
I went to, I started out at Claremont High School, and I ended up going to Corona Del Mar High School.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
It's a few miles away.
And my parents, you know, just moved, and that's where we ended up, so. But it was an experience. And I've always been infatuated by
With
speed.
the speed, right.
And I loved that part of the game, whether it was football, and when I worked in football, I was, you know, I saw where the game was going and that type of thing. But in baseball, I loved watching a lot of the baseball players. At that time, it wasn't, the 3-run home run was the whole gist of the game. And one thing that drew me to softball was the manufacturing of runs.
How old were you when Maury Worlds was doing his?
Let me think, that was in the early 60s.
Early mid-60s?
So I was probably in my teens.
So did he have much of an
Early
influence? Was he one of the guys you?
Oh, yeah, I loved it. I loved watching him play. I mean,
Jackie
Especially-
Robinson's a little before your time.
yeah, he was before my time, but, I heard a lot about him from my parents.
Sure.
And that type of thing,
And you
so.
saw the arrival of Pete Rose.
Love Pete Rose. Absolutely, probably one of my favorite players, if not my favorite player of all time to watch play.
Charlie Hustle.
Charlie Hustle, how he ran everything out, played the game so hard and so fast.
So quick story for all the coaches out there, why did Pete Rose run everything out so hard? He tells the story about 1969, his dad used to come to all his baseball games. Dad used to buy 4 tickets and just for himself, he'd attend by himself, but if Pete Rose went 0 for 1, then his dad would move seats to another seat, and if he went 0 for 2, then he'd move to the 3rd seat. If he got a hit, then he'd stay in that seat. And so he came out after one ball game, and his dad would never wait after the games for him because his dad had to wake up early to catch the bus to work. I think he mentioned at 7:30 in the morning or something. This was on social media, but there's a great story. So he came out of the locker room one night, going 0 for 3, and his dad was waiting for him by the car. And so Pete Rose thought maybe something happened to his mom while his dad was waiting for me. So he came out and said, "Hi, Dad, what's going on?" And his dad mentioned to him, "Son, you didn't run that ball out, that last one, that ground ball to second base. You didn't run as hard as you could. And I just want to know why you didn't run as hard." And Pete, I think, admitted he was a little frustrated. He'd drawn the collar that night, a couple ground outs, and so just told his dad why he did it. And his dad told him, "Well, every time you take that field and you run, you're representing me and you're representing your family."
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then he mentioned that his dad passed away not too many years after that, and so it's one thing to have him watching, it's another thing to know he's always over your shoulder watching.
Right.
But that's a little background, and the reason I think that's important is because how many people shaped their game after Pete Rose?
A lot.
A lot.
At least,
And I know that
my
it came from, again,
generation.
a fatherly value, it came from a value from one of your parents, and that's big, but man.
But anyway, getting back to some of the fast kids, Shanita Rogers was really fast. Of course, Natasha Watley, and I actually, her dad had me work with her batting left-handed and slapping.
Yeah,
At that time, she was fighting the urge because some coaches were trying to make her an outfielder instead of a shortstop. And also the fact that he still didn't want to give away the right-handed hitting. And at that time, softball.
Ed was not an easy sell.
No, not
Yeah,
one.
right.
But slapping-wise, she took to it pretty well.
Pretty easy to work with,
Oh, I love working with Natasha.
very natural,
She's very natural. What an athlete.
made
What an
it
athlete.
look easy.
And then she started coming to you, I know, for hitting, and
I got the old from Ed, well, if you can't beat them, join them, so I'm going ahead and give you a call, teach my daughter how to hit. But that rounded out her game, but yeah, she was, how about base running? Some of the best base runners come to your mind,
let me see.
on your teams or opposition.
I absolutely love, I mentioned this a few times, Sierra Briggs, from the standpoint, she's on our team now. And what she has is, it's like, there's good base runners, and then there's base runners with great instincts and are good base runners, and are fast too. And that's the way Sierra is,
Sure.
was.
Sure.
She just has a sixth sense of where the ball is. She's always picks up the ball. And she's one of those, if the ball's several times, she's scored coming around from second base, from a girl on third on the pass ball comes in and she trails her, and comes in as well.
Mhm.
She knows when to take that extra base, when not to. On those first and third situations where she's the trail runner, she knows as far as how to stay in that pick long enough. And then all of a sudden she'll break. She just has a great instinct.
Got that knack.
Caitlin Lowe was also, who I was fortunate enough to work with for a long period of time too. She also was very good and had just great quick bursts and natural instincts too.
So a heads-up base runner can make up for a lack of true speed, because you can gain a step or two just by anticipation, playing the speed of the ball, different things like that, and then being aggressive-minded. That's one thing watching, Coach Rob come over, Rob Wild, with our club, and watching him.
Oh, he's amazing with it.
You wanna talk about turn up the heat, turn up the gas on the bases. It's amazing to watch, and just pressure, which I've always felt this about our slappers, just the thought that you're gonna have to make a play, and I've watched Rob incorporate this into our system with his base running. The fact that they know you're gonna run, doesn't make it easier, it makes it harder, because they tell themselves they have to play catch, and even if they do, he's not gonna stop running. And
Right.
it's a lot of fun to watch, but.
Plus, it puts so much pressure on the pitcher too. Obviously she has to maybe not throw that changeup in certain counts that she might
Sure.
be able to.
Sure.
Maybe not throw down balls quite as much because it's tougher to run on, it's easier to run on a down ball than it is on a prize ball or even a different location ball.
And that's a good point to some of our coaches listening out there, because, again, a lot of times you get caught up in the score of the game and it alters the way that you coach, but heck, if you're down 3-1 and she's throwing a lot of nasty changeups and you happen to get a runner on, you have to remember every move that you make is a move, counter move to the other coach, and so,
Right.
there's a reason why they're feeling good about doing something. And a lot of times, a decision you make, dropping a bunt, stealing a base on a predictable count where you'd be amazed at just what simple charting can do as far as tendencies that people fall into, and you realize they're throwing this pitch on this count a lot, and so you take off, and then all of a sudden you start to negate, that off-speed pitch, or little things like that, or the down ball. Use it to your advantage, and don't just let the score dictate, your confidence as a coach. Wouldn't you agree? It's, a lot of coaches, for me, once they go up a run, or 2 runs, now they're more likely to squeeze. When it's 0-0, have you noticed this? A lot of coaches will not squeeze as much when it's 0-0, and I feel like, again, the security level, if you make that call and it's a mistake, that game could be on you. So we know defensively, coaches become more confident once they're a run or 2 ahead of us, and so we can anticipate hit and runs,
Exactly.
If they're not successful, they still haven't lost the lead. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. I also I think early in the game is the time to start being aggressive, at least try to find out what the catcher's arm's like, and you can test coverages like on bluff bunt steals, which basically are kind of a fail-safe if you run it right, but also there's a way to defense that, in my opinion.
How about
too.
fake steals? Have you ever used those much?
Well, I use bluff bunts as a fake steal. Is that what you're talking about? Or
So we
something?
I got this from playing at the Cerritos program in baseball, and we used fake steal a lot, and really what that was to initiate a hard first step. It's not an extended lead, but
Okay.
to sell everything about what you're doing is that you're going.
Mhm.
And, you start to pull a shortstop by a step, you start to create communication with the other team, they're going, then you're going and they don't know they're going, and it was really interesting opening up holes, not just with a steal, but just faking, just like the fake bunt. You bluff the bunt, and if the third baseman doesn't move at all on a bluff bunt, time to bunt on her.
One thing we do is, we bluff on a fly ball that's not very deep.
Sure.
The
Draw the
idea is,
throw.
trying to, every time you create a throw, there's an opportunity that,
Sure,
the secondary runner might be able to tag and go on that.
sure.
Or, you can change a lot of different things.
Well, and creating 12-6 spin for an outfielder so that when they throw the ball bounces on the ground and goes straight to the base. There's not a lot of outfielders that do that, and very few of them know how to really control that bounce when it's off the side of their fingertips a little bit and have it bounce a little bit to the left so it bounces back to the right. And so a lot of times you can make something happen with it, make something out of nothing, right?
Talking just what I was reminded about, one thing again about Natasha, how she won a CIF championship, or her team did. She was on second base, slapped to the shortstop. She came all the way around, scored from second base.
That is
And
great.
I saw Caitlin Lowe score more than once on tagging up on a fly ball from second base.
Wow. Look at that. And I think number one is defensively, unless you know the player has that mentality, you're not looking for it.
Right.
So just catching the ball as a relay infielder, you know, you can kind of turn around a little slowly and not realize there they go. It's like when you have those base runners that'll steal third, you know, whether it's on the throw to the pitcher or they let the pitcher walk out of the circle, but it's that the pitcher's not anticipating they're gonna go, and it's just that little split second. Which I think of the games that we grew up playing, because we didn't have any batting lessons growing up, did we, Diane?
Nope.
Don't wanna shoot our own profession down there, so I'm not even teaching anymore, but not in the private sector like that. But, you know, how did we learn? To me, one of the greatest games ever for base running, if not the greatest game, was pickle.
Exactly.
The whole idea was don't touch me.
Exactly.
So what you do in changing direction, on what it takes to change direction, and just the instincts, it really wasn't about a technique, it was the fact that you were trying not to be tagged out. And don't be afraid, especially don't you think with some of the younger ages, maybe 10 or so, to incorporate these game-like, not practices, but make things competitive, make things, because it's that right brain, left brain stuff. When a kid can approach softball like it's tetherball at recess, or kickball, she's gonna embrace it a lot more, and we get into such a habit of teaching and coaching that we make it some type of study session where it's, you know, it's constant analyzing and things like that, but keeping it fun, right?
You know, one of the things I like to do is talk to some of my former players when they come back from college and try to, you know, pick their brain about, you know, some of the practices that they liked or some of the things that they were doing. And a lot of the good practices they have were of the nature you're talking about, as far as making it competitive.
Yeah.
We used to do a lot of competitive things in our practices too at different points. We would have an offense versus defense type things, where we would have, let's say you have 15 players on your team, so you basically divide 3 groups of 5. 5 people batting, 10 people out in the field, and what you're gonna do then is you'd have games like with different counts, and have the pitcher work on whatever her worst pitch is. Or if you want to develop a changeup, like 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3 pitches
Right.
has to be that changeup.
Right.
And you compile how many runs did you get, and then you break it down into more situational type hittings, or 3-2 counts
Right.
for pitchers, where she has to throw a strike, and so it kind of puts pressure on. But those type of things that you could work on during practice.
Now, when you're coaching high school out of a week's practice time, and you're playing 2 days out of that week, are you doing that once or twice a week? Or is that part of your practice structure, or would it depend on what you felt the team needed?
A little bit of everything, I think. One thing, again, I liked in high school was the fact that we could prepare more or less on who we were gonna play.
Now, would
So
you
we-
have your whole, like a teacher's curriculum, pretty much the whole season of what you wanted to do with the team? Are you one of those guys and you have it pretty much, or do you
I think you have to be,
improvise, or?
that kind of describes Steve Harrington's practice, who was probably the most organized guy as
You
far as
can pull it
practice.
out right here, or pull
Oh,
up the file.
he would have every game plan for every practice plan for every day. He would have so much video on whoever we were gonna play, or they were gonna play, I should say. And he coached with me on different occasions with my teams, and he was a huge help as far as that goes, but,
One of the most knowledgeable guys out there as far as, you know, how to coach the game. I've always said this, and Steve knows this, that when you're coaching against him, if he's got all cylinders working, you're gonna have your work cut out for you. You know, win or lose, he's coaching every pitch. And so I don't know if I wanna say I'm either not blessed with that mind or not cursed with that kind of mind, you know, with all the information and everything else. You know, I admire it.
well, it's interesting watching, he and Rob have a lot of similarities in different ways. They're both, you know, one of those guys that, if you put a runner on base, they've got a better chance than most that are gonna figure a way to get that runner in.
Right, manufacture it.
Exactly, and he was also, the other thing I really admired with him was, it seems like bunting's a lost art.
Oh.
And he really, everybody on his team could bunt. He would have people that he could pull off the bench, and they were great bunters. And that was basically a sole role of this one kid. She was gonna come up in a critical time, and she was gonna bunt.
I very much believe it's underutilized now. It's not that I'm a proponent of the 2-foot hit. I'm a proponent of what it does to the other team psychologically, especially if you're you gotta mix up your game a little bit. They're having some success. The right-handed bunt, the sneaky bunt for the right-hander. To this day, does anyone stand out to you of who could really teach the right-handed bunt? Have you ever seen any coaches that were really good? I've got a couple that come to my mind that were just amazing in how they would teach the bunt. I mean, there's the bunt, right? The concept.
Right.
But then
Yeah.
there's have you ever seen
Right.
Susie Brasney teach the right-handed bunt? So Susie Brasney, long history, USA softball.
I love
Coach
Susie.
at Golden West for a long time, and played Women's Open. If I know she's still playing right now. I don't know if it's slow pitch or fast pitch. She'd get mad at me if it was fast pitch and I call it slow pitch. I remember watching Susie catch in the Women's Open division with no shin guards.
I was gonna say that, exactly.
And
She was
people
a great-
listening to this would go, what are you talking about? No shin guards. She would have the little soccer shin guards. She'd have the little mask, and she's catching some world-class pitchers.
She is.
She's not out there catching someone,
Well,
lobbing the
one-
ball over.
One of her pitchers that she was on her travel team was Michelle Granger.
Yeah.
And that was Michelle when she was like 15 years old.
Yeah, and that's pretty intense. Susie could drop a sneak bunt, and I wanna say she could do the one-hander and drop it between her legs. She is number one on the list to me. If I could extract that from her someday, I'd be very happy. And then Bill Smith used to coach in our program. He coached one of Gary Wardine's first coaches in the program back in the early '90s and mid-'90s. And Bill was always, I don't wanna say underappreciated. Again, a lot of times in this game, you're really recognized when you win the big ones, but there's so many coaches that are really excellent coaches, and Bill was one of the best coaches I've ever seen. He used to have fun with us. I mean, we'd have these talented teams with Kelsey and all these kids that we talked about. We'd scrimmage Bill, and Bill would just have fun with us, kind of slapping us around, because he knew game management and some things to do with softball wise I didn't know at that time, and he would just toy with us, whether it was a first and third play or sneaky bunts or something. Guy really knew the game, but not enough. People don't understand that when the pitch caller, not enough coaches understand that when the pitch caller is not sure of what you're gonna do, it makes it harder for them to call the right pitch. If I know you're slapping, I can pitch to your slap. If I know you're bunting, I can pitch to your bunt. If I know you're swinging, I can pitch to your swing. And considering I have a pitcher that can provide what we need. But if I don't know, then I'm guessing, taking an educated guess, but I could guess wrong. And that's really the fun of the game.
That's one of the things that's really changed, I think, as far as slapping is concerned, the true word we want to use is multi-dimensional hitting.
Yeah.
Being able to do things, from the same spot, basically, not telegraphing where you're gonna stand in the back of the box when you slap, which is gonna tell everybody what you're gonna do, but kind of from the same point, being able to do different things, whether it's drag bunt down the first baseline, or sneak bunt, or push bunt, or soft slap, or bounce the ball slap, or, a whole bunch of different things that you wanna do.
Have you found that the better caliber pitcher that you're facing and better caliber team, to me, I want to be ready to use all of our tools, but really you can't use a lot of them.
Right.
You're facing a certain type of dominance that you have to find the one thing that's going to be effective. You can't just, let's try this, let's try that. Your choices become very limited when you're playing the best. So whether it's the best coach, one of the best coaches, one of the best pitchers, best teams, whatever, one of those little plays that you have can determine the game, but it's not like 5 of them are going to work.
Right.
Even with the aggressive base running, in your toughest games where the pitchers are really on, how many base runners do you have that game? 4?
Not that many, yeah.
So all of it becomes, like you mentioned about Steve, it becomes your ability to manufacture, move them from station to station, get something out of the at-bats, in return, don't waste outs, different things like that. And then, and softball especially, there's so many different ways to score without getting a base hit.
The guy that I really learned a lot from was Gary Henning. As far as that goes, and he would do exactly what you're saying. It might take him a while, but sooner or later he was gonna come through. And his whole thing was putting pressure on teams.
Sure.
I mean, it's so much, the difference with nobody on and a lefty up at bat compared to runner on first or runner on second with the wheels in motion when they're taking off on that pitch.
Sure.
And the shortstop has to worry about covering second base or covering third base and you slapping the ball. Or even on first and third, one of the things I love to talk about is defensing some of the things that ones I mentioned was defensing the bluff bunt steal and how important communication between the third baseman and other players on the field is, yelling out
Shortstop.
bluff or whatever. And the same thing on first and third situation. And I loved, when I talked to every coach, almost, I asked him, what are the different coverages you use on your first and third? And one of the ones that give them the most trouble is when you have a slapper up at bat. Because basically what happens, or a multi-dimensional lefty up at bat is what I mean. So instead of having the shortstop cover second base, because then you're gonna have a big hole right there, because, or the second baseman covering in, because then you're giving up the bunt down the first baseline, so you're really challenged, I think, when you get that
You
done.
know that good team with the second baseman covering is gonna stay outside on you.
Exactly,
They're gonna keep scraping that, yeah.
exactly.
Because if they throw you something to bunt that ball down the first baseline, you know, we did something in the championship game once, knowing that the pitcher was not gonna throw anything inside, but they had reverse coverage. And we called a timeout, and I said, let's just try this. I want you to, when you fake bunt to our left-hander, I said, I want you to fake bunt so fast that her reflex at second base takes over more than she knows you're covering second base. So when you turn to bunt, I want you to turn like you're gonna drop it as fast as you can. Let's just see if we can get a slight hesitation. We have this game on TV. It was actually really quick. I tell people, like, there's sometimes you make something up in the middle of the game. I just felt it was, we knew that they knew their assignment, so let's play with their instincts. And we had a player, Molly Bosher, was up at plate. Boom, she turned around, man, she flipped that fake bunt, and the second baseman took one step on the reflex and then went to right to cover the base, but we stole the base on it. And she was just a little bit, because I figured, look, there's what you're trained to do now in this reverse defense, but there's also what your mind has seen 100, if not 1,000 times, and you have a reflex to that. I've also found at the highest level of play against the best coaches and best players, sometimes you have to go with tricking their instincts because they're so used to doing something, we talk about whether it's a fake off the base runner or whatever, where someone's gonna draw, throw, whatever it is, but you're playing with their instincts. That's a whole other different kind of level of the game when you get to it. It's a lot of fun, but how about you? What's the key for your first and third? In order for your defenses to be successful in first and third situations, are there any keys for you?
A couple things. First of all, I think people show their defenses too soon. And I don't think you should immediately line up with your first baseman all the way back. You want to be able to try to play tricks the other direction too.
Sure.
Like you're going to be covered on that side. You're
Football
going to
right
be
there,
doing
sure.
The other thing, basically, coverages to me are dictated on location of the pitch you're gonna throw.
Right.
So if you're gonna have a second baseman coming across, or if you're way ahead in the game defensively, you're just gonna throw the girl out at second base, let's say.
Right.
So a lot of that things happen, but instincts, like you say, play a huge deal on that.
I think that for us, historically, the biggest key in our ability to defense a first and third situation is our shortstop. When we have a shortstop that has the arm strength and has the dominance of the field, the way you'd like a shortstop to have, and can pursue a runner in between first and second base aggressively, but stop on a dime and throw somebody linear this way, that's, when trained correctly, it's been our highest level of success. It's purely on that shortstop. Now, you have to modify and change things if you don't have that shortstop. Maybe the arm strength isn't there. See a lot of coaches give up coverage where the second baseman's always coming in to cut, even if it's a fake that the throw, so you got the shortstop covering the second baseman covering in to kind of bluff the throw.
Right.
And so, all you need is a little bouncer on one side of the pitch or the other. These are little things I learned from Kerry Crouch. A little bouncer in that situation, you've got three players lined up right up the middle, you're throwing something near the plate, I know you're anticipating this still. So I really have tried to learn a lot from some softball-specific coaches, so with my background, but also see what plays out in a softball field. It's been interesting to watch.
Again, with the play the bandage used to, I mentioned this at different times, I think that adds another dimension to it too, because there's a decision you have to make as an infielder. You're either gonna go for the girl that's almost on the grass, or,
Sure.
but if you do that, you're gonna create a much longer throw, and that's one of the reasons why you wanna do that in the first place.
If you have a quick shortstop but not a strong arm shortstop, that's gonna get you in trouble. This was something I got from baseball that I don't think enough coaches think about. We use pop times to gauge whether we can steal a base, you know, from the time we leave first base and then a pop time of whether it's 1-9, 1-8, 2-0, or whatever it is. And so we explained to our base runners a lot, let's just say you're on third base, or you're going from first to third, and you realize the outfielder has that ball, what is it, 84 feet from catcher to second base, and you're trying to go one base? So let's say you're getting to second base, and you realize that outfielder has 130 feet to throw to third base, and you're at second base. So if she was a catcher, how hard would it be for her to throw that ball that far and put it on a dime and throw you out?
Exactly.
Now, it's not to say you're never gonna be thrown out at third base, but, you know, sometimes the ball will get there, you think, when you see the kid put on the brakes, or, you know, not really running aggressively, but if you think about a pop time for a catcher, and 1-8, 1-9, and we can get from first to second with a good jump, you know, realize that when you've got even an infielder taking a relay out there, you know, that's a lot longer throw, and take that extra base, it's still the 60 feet, you know, and you can make up a lot of your game management skills with just, you know, heads up base running, anticipating plays and different things like that.
And I think there's actually even some more things to take into consideration at that point, who you got, the score, the outs.
Sure.
Who do you have up next? If it's your hitter that's gone like 7 for 8 and, you know, that type of thing.
Sure, that factors in. You know, we like to usually talk about the lineup and different things like that, and you know, you'll pick key parts of the lineup that we talk about. So today we'll mention, you know, the 1 spot and the 3 spot. How do you utilize those spots in your lineup?
Well, you know, there's a lot of traditional things.
There's the obvious, right?
Yeah, where, you know, and I mentioned a book that I've been reading too, it's called Smart Baseball, and listening to the differences in baseball and softball, and basically baseball doesn't really believe in bunting because of the, you know, the 27 out
More,
things.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
and except in big games when they're not used to doing it, and then all of a sudden they have to do it, and they wonder why it's not
Nice
successful.
pop up to the catcher, right?
Yeah, leadoff batter has got to be able to get on base. You know, I'd say a high percentage of the time.
So you as a renowned slapping type coach, but you don't always have a slapper leading off for you. You've had right-handers.
We've had right-handers, but we'll have a lot of times we'll have a lefty bat second, let's say, and put pressure on him.
So who hit behind Kristen Ariola? Did she play for your 16s? She was your leadoff batter?
We had Franny Echeverria,
Okay.
who played for Cal and
Yeah.
and we've had other people, you know, different combinations. We'll have even further down the line, we'd always have a strong bottom, our best teams had a strong bottom of the lineup, so we could flip the lineup over.
I look at it either a 1 through 4 or a solid 1 through 5, and then you start the lineup over. You know, so that back half can pick it up as well.
The other thing that baseball talks a lot about, more than softball, is the advantage when you have baseball's best hitter is the number 2 hitter, okay? The reason that
Best hitter meaning most productive, most functional, what would you, how would you?
I would say both
Okay.
productive and most functional.
Interesting.
The reason is because they're gonna bat 2.5 more times of a bat over so many games than the number 3 hitter. And outside of, let's say, I think it's the number 9 hitter or whatever, they are left on base, the number 3 batter doesn't get an opportunity to hit with the game on the line more times than you would imagine. That's
Interesting, yeah.
That's one of the reasons that they go by that, but,
Now I used to watch when the Dodgers had Piazza, and they used to bat in third in the lineup. And I was a big Piazza fan. I was lukewarm on Eric Karros, and they used to bat Karros fourth. And they might have had some experimentation where they switched him around. But what I remember over and over and over when Piazza was with the Dodgers, he would come up with 2 outs in the 9th and hit a home run to tie or win it. And I would think about how many times if he was a 4th batter, he never even gets up. And so we took it a step farther with our lineups. Probably about 2009, probably starting with Katie Cochran. So 2009, 2010, maybe a little earlier, 2008, Katie was before that, of putting that crap hitter at the top of the lineup. She could be a lefty, Jamia Reed was one of them, but let's get that batter up to the top of the lineup, because in softball, pitchers can be a little emotionally unstable at times, wouldn't you say? You know, so kind of we set a different type of tone. It wasn't always gonna be a speed tone, it was gonna be somebody to set the tone, but also somebody that at the end of the game, I didn't wanna see them on deck. And
Right.
so Chamberlain led off for us, Missy Takiao led off for us, and I can tell you that, you talked about those 2.7 times at bats, that number 2 batter's gonna get over the number 3, you know, over the course of a softball season, because you think about how many games and how many at bats our kids are getting, even with a high school break, you know, they're getting a lot of them. But
Right.
I can tell you as a coach, that worked to our favor quite often.
Yeah, the only drawback to that is for a lot of teams is that with the number 1 batter, who's, the bottom half of the lineup, usually on most teams, is not gonna be able to generate the type of offense to get on base as
Right.
much. That's probably one of the reasons why they don't, but I've done that with, like you mentioned, Kristen Mariola, she had more, you know, leadoff home runs, first pitch of the game type of things than any player I've ever had.
Yeah,
She just, she thrived in those type of situations.
yeah,
But I still like to be able to, especially early on games, to put pressure on the other team.
sure, make
It
things happen.
seems, it seems like more games are won or lost in that first inning. I used to love, almost every single one of the Nationals, we always wanted to be a visitor.
Mhm.
Because we wanted to initially, and Don, you know Don Sarno, the great pitching
Yeah.
coach,
Mhm.
he explained that to me one time, why he thought it was important for pitchers to throw on the sidelines with hitters up at bat. You know, just standing in.
Mhm, mhm.
And all of a sudden, if they don't do that, they go out to the field itself, and it's all of a sudden a different type of pressure they're seeing.
Right.
They got an umpire, they got batters there, they might not have everything quite together, whether they're not warm or whatever.
Steve Arrington did a seminar for us once, and not only talked about the standard, but, you know, space closer to the pitcher, farther back in the box, you know, that relationship and the pitcher understanding that distance and where to throw to the batter. Yes, you're throwing to your target, where that batter's sitting changes the plane of her swing, different things, and it was really quite in depth. And, you know, that's something that's a little underutilized in softball. Pitchers a lot of times have the same type of routine, same type of bullpen, same type of warm-up routine, you know, based on wherever they got it from, but,
Who usually monitors your pitchers when they're warming up during the game? Let's say a relief pitcher.
well, now Rob's brought over Holly Pierce.
Okay.
And so, you know, she was with her dad with the Jets for the longest time, and coached with Rob over at Los Alamitos. And I really like Holly because she's emotionally pretty consistent, you know, she's the same. We've had her out this year. And I talk about a pitching manager more than a pitching coach, you know, that you're managing, you're talking with them, you're asking questions, how do they feel, boom. She's into the psychology of the game as well. So Holly does it for us right now, and, you know, Rob's got the reins of the team. I try to sprinkle in a little things for our attitudes and behaviors that we've had historically, but honestly, they're doing a really great job of kind of handling their roles.
I would imagine though, if you talk to most teams, they're being honest. They have nobody there.
Right.
They go warm up.
Well, the problem when you're a one-man show, and I was a long time in the way that I coached, is, you know, you do all these things, but you can't be everywhere at once.
Right.
So you like to see your pitchers throw their bullpens, great, but now you're running a lineup before the game because you're between your third and fourth games, and you know, you gotta go from one field to the other, and you gotta write that lineup
Right.
because it changes from game to game, and nobody's watching your pitcher. You know, I've always, it's been really important for me on intel, on people telling me, you know, what's working, what's not working. I see coach after coach, well, you know, you put a kid in from the bullpen and you start calling pitches, and you have no idea what she was throwing well. And we also know this, you could be throwing great in the bullpen, and that pitch isn't working at all in the field, but get some type of intel on, hey, good control to change it right here, or not good control of her best pitch right now. You might be careful, because you go in, you start calling pitches based on theory, it starts blowing up in your face, but really the intel was there before if you just would have been able to get a little information. Last thing I want to bring up, and we'll wrap it up for today, is we talked a little bit about coaches, and one thing that I'd like to mention to our coaches out there is, you know, a lot of times we get together and we talk softball all the time. And so I'm gonna mention this to coaches, not only about the coaches on their coaching staff, but their parents. Have an idea what it is that your surrounding people in your culture do for a living. You know, we're on video today because one of our coaches, Mike, you know, this is what he does. And if we don't have a conversation and I don't ask the right question, or for me, God forbid, we're just talking softball all the time, we don't realize really what he does for a living and how he can really provide and round out the experience. You know, for us, you know, I don't know how many people are excited about seeing our faces, but the fact that we have a video component. So I encourage all coaches to have conversations with not only their coaches about what else they do, because they are your eyes and ears, and where I don't think Doug would need slapping advice from one of his coaches. I mean, obviously, he could use an observation that can help him make a decision, but, you know, some of you are in intelligence, some of you are in, you know, different type of industries where you round out the experience based on your professional experience. Don't just look to bring your softball goggles to the field, even though I know that's what you're most excited about. I'm excited about coaching. All right, we're gonna talk hitting, we're gonna talk this. But realize what value you have and what you bring from your outside world, because I've said this a million times, softball is like the wild, wild west. And we need models, we need things that have been proven in other areas of life so we can bring them into softball and superimpose over them so that we can build a structure and start to have the success at the lower levels. So whether it's teaching fundamentals, game management, game strategy, the psychological aspect of it, but there's so much involvement. You know, how many businesses now aren't this hierarchy business where they've got one guy sitting at the top and he tells everybody what to do? They're creating autonomous businesses where now departments are being given the power to do what they do best.
Right.
Like our apparel department here, you know, there's different aspects of our company. And empower your coaches. Stay in charge, try to know what you don't know, but talk to your parents and talk to your people around, because you'd be surprised, and all of a sudden, you've got somebody that can make a recruiting profile a lot easier than you can, because there's so many aspects of this business to run, Doug, as you know, and you talk a lot about utilizing the strengths of your coaches and supplementing with the right type of roles and giving them value, right, and empowering them.
Yeah, and again, it's different from high school than it is in travel. Basically, high school, you have to find somebody that's can fit coach in that time frame. So a lot of times, and then the vetting process takes longer and longer, and rightfully so, but it just takes long. So you're constantly scrambling for coaches, and you don't necessarily get. And I've actually had some really good coaches, and also some that you know, let's say wasn't what we needed.
Well intended.
Well, yeah, and in travel ball, you gotta be careful as far as hiring, getting parents. I've had coaches that have been great, that have also been parents, but it's.
Usually odds are against you.
And you're setting up too many situations when you do that with the parents and the team. I've always been friends with the parents, but I've never been one that hung out with any of the parents. I've never gone out and.
Nothing wrong with being friendly,
Right.
but careful, don't be looking for a new best friend, especially when you're making lineups, guys. Because we're here to serve them.
Exactly.
We want to be their best friend.
The other thing is, I think it's real important that you get your coaches involved. So you're not sitting there, make them feel important.
Sure.
Because they are. I see so many coaches, and some of them are great coaches, but when they're doing everything, they're calling pitches, they're doing everything on practice, they're doing everything, coaching third. When you have a first base coach, I think that's another thing I wanted to mention real quick about having roles. What is the responsibility of the first base coach? Some people just stick people over there. And that's, you do little things. You're looking at the field, you're looking at,
Second baseman.
yeah, if there's an open base, which happens, basically a shortstop slaps the ball. You slap the ball to the shortstop, she comes in to make the play. Second baseman is going the wrong, there's nobody covering second.
Sure.
You can pick that up easily, but there's a lot of different things that you can do as a first base coach.
Can't you tell when you're facing a team, you can tell from the first runner on first base, the level of first base coach that you're coaching against, what they're gonna be able to utilize. Some of them will stand there like a field ornament, but the ones that really know how to coach, they're providing a lot of information. Whether it's getting tip signs from the catcher to looking at your defensive positioning or whatever, but you can tell right away, can't you?
Exactly, and one of the other things we use it for too is the first and third situation. Like, especially this time of year, we go almost 90% of the time. As soon as a girl gets a walk, she's gonna take off with a little bit of a deep angle and then try to create something. And just those type of things. You're looking at the outfielder, you're telling them where they're lined up. They're
Sure.
lined up differently, because you as a base runner,
Don't assume.
yeah, there's some things you can't see.
Sure.
That we were talking about the third base coach and the lack of value when they're just paying attention to the batter itself.
Right.
And getting frustrated by what they're doing or not doing. As far as being able to pick up pitches from either the shortstop, the center
Sure.
fielder, or those type
Sure.
of things. But then you have outfield specialists for your coach. Be flexible about get too tied into doing certain practices.
Mhm.
We would have different practices for different types of things. I had a longer practice when we would do that, where I tried to incorporate live pitching whenever we could. The problem with that, it does take a little bit longer, but try to be flexible and get input from who your coaches are, that type of thing.
What do you have your players do over the holidays? Do they take it a little bit easier?
Take a break, but
What
not,
do you suggest?
a little bit of both. They will take a break, but they're not gonna completely forget about it either. Most of the hitters on our team, they still hit during the holidays.
Lesson-wise, they don't really slow down. Maybe it's just the week between Christmas and New Year's.
Pretty
I mean,
much.
It's a 12-month a year sport. So I would encourage people to balance out things, though. You know,
Mm-hmm.
go see a couple movies, go see some relatives. I mean, we know, like, again, starting off with the story of our moms, but there were plenty of weekends I'm on the ball field and I'm not there for certain things, and we do that, and that's part of your commitment. But balance things out. You know, stay healthy. Most of the softball world doesn't need to be told to work, but work smartly, work wisely, incorporate some type of a holiday, don't just make it a grind, you know, and because this really is the only time that they can really slow down a little bit. Once you pick up again in January now, we go all the way to the end of nationals at the end of July, and then we pick up, there's no more August off.
I know.
Tryouts and everything else starting the first week, so, you know, we want everyone to have good holidays. Doug, we'll have one more conversation before Christmas, and I'm sure we'll get Don and maybe Jim back in here, but I always appreciate you coming by.
I love
Pleasure
it.
talking to you, sir, and wish I would've learned a lot of these things maybe a lot earlier, but better late than never, but really appreciate it, and we'll talk to
Same
you
here.
again soon, okay?
Okay,
All right,
thank you. Very good. That was awesome.
Thank you, that was good. Okay, Mike, I know you're watching, we're all done if we didn't put you to sleep. Probably snoring on his phone. Thank you.
Yeah, that was fun.
We'll see how that registers. Now, the difference for that is, and we may eventually, when I watch podcasts, video podcasts, the times that I like to watch them are at night. So when, you know, I can actually take up my phone and put it up on my television, so I will watch, but I usually fall asleep to them. And not because it's, you know, there's a guy, Joe Rogan, does 2-3 hour podcasts. And everything he has to say with his guests are great, but it's a really lengthy time to sit there and listen to someone. But what I'll do is I'll turn on the TV and I'll watch him, and then when I start to feel myself, then I find myself listening to the audio, and then I know I fell asleep somewhere around the hour mark, and the next night I'll probably start it up, something like that. But it's just this, I like to kind of play around, because number one is, I don't care if nobody listens, I enjoy talking with you, but I know too much about, especially our culture, that some of these coaches are getting a lot out of this. So I try to take it different places. So at the end, they walk away with, I mean, honestly, when we started talking about softball, where they can get one big principle from their moms, but we start talking about softball, there were probably, I want to say 10 to 20 gold nuggets, probably 10 to 15. Or I could say to a coach, you give me one sentence that you heard in there, and I can tell you how this could change your coaching experience. But don't try to get all 15 of them. That's not what the conversation is about, so.
Well, one of the things that I think we do is we go back and talk over old subjects a little bit, and
Yeah.
might add to or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to start,
I say putting some different people in the mix. Because there are some people to pull in, and some people I'm not sure about. Some people need this. Like, I look at a guy like Brett Donaio. Brett's a good man. Brett cares about a lot of people. I believe he's the reason why PGF is still above water because Brett's the one that talks to people on the phone. He's empathetic, he cares about people. And, actually, I need to make sure this guy's not recording this before I start shooting my mouth off.